Shirley here with Sirius Taurus Moon, and this is Venus, our Soul Day. Soul is in the ninth house, 11 degrees. Venus is in the eighth house with the Moon in the first, and the Moon is on benevolent Sagittarius, separating from an opposition to Pluto, and Jupiter is in the eighth house, which is a great time to talk about relational astrology. And I'd like to talk about a concept called the progressed composite chart. So, when we look at relationships in astrology, and it can be any type of relationship, we are looking at two natal charts, okay, two charts of people, how they are, how should I say, 1 plus 1, okay? How do they get along in the world together on a day-to-day basis is the synastry. It's basically what planet is one person bringing to the other, how do they interact, and so on and so forth. The composite, which unlike some of my colleagues, I noticed that it is almost an immediate, and this is the blending of energies. Now, of course, people that have been subjected to MK Ultra, like, they're going to have that immediacy, perhaps more. However, I did give challenges in the composite chart readings, and people found them very useful, and I gave them for people who were just dating. So that was an unusual way to use a composite in Western context. And the composite chart basically means something alongside of the midpoints between the planets. There's not only midpoint approach, but it basically is supposed to represent how these two become one. And this is why some people would say that the synastry is how people get along, and what that becomes, what that evolves to after, I don't know, being married or something like that, is the composite. In my experience, so many people have undergone ritual abuse that even by the merit of the energy sensitivity, it's a composite immediately. Okay. So, alternatively, this is something that people have always been sensitive to, and I'm not oversensitive. So, okay, and me and my clients are not oversensitive. Okay, so that is a thing to keep in mind. Um, and then there is the Davidson chart, which I have to admit I don't know exactly what it means in terms of like composite versus Davidson, but it's another one of those blending charts that also has a meaning. And then there is the progressed composite. So the progressed composite, or the progress chart, both the progressed natal chart, but also the progressed composite, can give us where is that connection. What do these two, or if it's a group relation, group setting, what do these two, or what is this group doing right now? And for more accuracy, I use, two people, three people tops with that, but it can be used for more. It's just not going to represent every individual in the group. That's the thing. That's what we lose when we go to large numbers. Um, and when it comes to the progressed composite, it can give us challenges and amiable aspects in a way that can really emphasize how some relationships have periods where, hey, these two do well together, even though the composite looks like something I wouldn't recommend to participate on long term. Um, and hey, these people seem to be doing well together. It's unpredictable, and that can be a period that is denoted by the composite chart. And it can also be where people that didn't used to do well at all suddenly get along, and they're like, why are these two actually get along right now? Is that a forever thing, or are they going to continue? One of the answers that we can receive can be through the progressed composite. I have witnessed, participated in composites that have a really megalithic opposition between the Sun, Venus, and Mercury and Pluto, um, where I looked at the composite chart and I'm like, okay, that doesn't look like something I would prescribe. And then I looked at the progressed chart, and that was a time where, for me, for example, during my Pluto square Pluto, which would also be Pluto square Venus, the progressed chart had a Pluto trine Venus and a Pluto trine Jupiter, which basically means um, um, better chances for mutual growth and to transmute issues to do with connection and power, connection and occult, connection and psyops, connection in secret societies, values secret societies, women's secret societies. Um, yes, Venus can also be art and beauty and so on. So it can be manifest in a different situation. But then it was like, oh, okay, so that quite striking looking composite is going through a progression period where it's actually okay. Okay, and usually what we'll see is that period will go through, and then what is not so, then naturally people tend to attract different partners or desire to be to go along in a different setting or and again, it doesn't necessarily denote anything romantic. Okay, I know that the aspects I mentioned sound pretty romantic, but it doesn't necessarily denote that. Um, I did a lot of politics charts. So politics is power and wealth redistribution, and that affects women, children, fertility, ideas, religion, and so on. So that is a facet of that. Okay, that it's just very simply put. Not gonna say the word children again. Um, and the funny thing is when you do activism regarding these things, and everybody think you're kind of stressed, stressed to have children or something. I'm like, I'm pretty child free. I'm a survivor of attempts to traffic me into Petering, so that would be, um, that would probably be why that topic is important to me. So more about the progressed composite. Um, Again, it is just one of those significations in astrology where whether it's a workplace or a partnership, I hear even today that people think about marriage contract for several years that they can renew. And I think that adapting our economy and resources distribution to make that possible without people unaliving themselves because the wife wants a divorce. Men are more successful unaliving themselves during divorce and less supported. They have less support um, in general. Women, unfortunately, tend to be unalived, which is or tagged psychiatrically, and then when she recovers from thinking she is a borderline to, oh, that's because my husband was a narcissist. Now to take it up a notch to know he was a part of the intelligence. I was like, that's supposed to be my national security, right? Yes, it's not exactly keeping you safe what they're doing there. He is just the result of a society that grew him up MK Ultra style. You're the result of a society that grew you MK Ultra style. And then you met. And that was the most happiness that you could have in that society. So, how many people feel relieved from their narcissistic ex men or borderline ex? Women tend to be called borderline. I heard women being called narcissists as well. Um, So perhaps that had a therapeutic explanation for people. Um, and this is again where astrology can predict um, the more intricate part of situations, okay, and the fact that we might not always get along with the same people, but also we might suddenly get along with people that we haven't got along with, and giving that space and not building our joint accounts on our joint dreams, or joint housing on our joint dreams, can be very possible, and at the same time for the people for whom, let's say, the housing is the ruler of the seventh or the eighth and so on, that might mean that they need housing available for them when they separate, even if they live in a separate house, because what they're changing with the partner is the housing. Learn I'm I'm lifting my hands in surrender right now, uh, trying to curate housing and finances issues and relational issues. Um, so it can be beyond complicated, and when we talk about politics, which is wealth redistribution, it needs to accommodate for way more than we thought. And it's nice for the people to be educated about that, because a lot of people are not, and they either go by, no, well, I mean, of course we're going to live in the same house and so on. I mean, why, we can save money, and all the money goes to your divorce lawyer. All the money, and to the psychologist who cannot, has a threshold, a ceiling threshold, that they've been enculturated that they can only treat your conditions so far as you don't begin to remember what happened to you, because when you do, you're gonna remember why. And this is where you actually begin to heal your relations with your ancestry, with your upbringing, with your abusive dad or mom or both or whatnot, and your abusive husband or wife. But then you begin to understand the role of, like, those who fund the government. Okay? And it's like they don't want you to blame your parents too much, because you need to be in patronized relations with somebody, the state, but they definitely don't want you to recover your relationship with your parents, because that means you're more sovereign, and that means you identify dysfunctional familial units, which are also national units, which are also people versus units. And that can be a fiscal challenge for economical hitmanship. um, Although essentially that would probably be the best antidote for the elite families, because what they're doing to their children is, um, I don't want to put Elon Musk on the spot. I don't want to put Elon Musk on the spot. Elon Musk. Okay, like that's a person that suffered during the upbringing and they have a shit ton of money that didn't help them find necessarily the correct therapy for their own life, and the fact that they were surrounded with Mormon society that preached having billions of children was not exactly helping. And the other things that the other things that every person in that level is going through and is involved in is also challenging. Okay? um, so progress composites. This is where um, if you're in all a good connection, and having a rough patch, this is where you're going to know if this is a rough patch, or if this is a reminder that your composite chart is not exactly you know, marriage material. Okay. Um, uh, and at the same time, um, we definitely want to be cherishing and honoring those situations where two people that wouldn't normally get along begin to get along, because this is where amazing things happen. Um, First of all, both people can stay humble when it comes to the fact that those things occur in life in general. Okay, just like it can be, and not humble in a sense of, I don't mean humiliation. Humble, I mean humble in the sense that, hey, that's another part of the intricacy of human connections, um, and also, the progressed composite can give you a time where there is a fruitful creation in a certain condition here that you might not want to miss out on. Um, and, um, and when it comes to um, the usual settings in people, whether it's a job where people say, oh, you have to work only in this job and not work for another person and so on. They want commitments like relationships sometimes. Or in a relationship, um, it is important to understand. Okay, there was an episode where I talked about, I think it was the Venus retrograde in Scorpio for 2026. And I talked about those Pluto Venus hard aspects where there can be a triangle. Okay, and sometimes even not intentional. Okay, it can be somebody's eyeing somebody, and whether something happens or not, or whether, I don't know, whether they didn't even know that who was that person and so on. Um, then that can be a situation where the what is happening with one partner is there's a glass ceiling that to cross that other person, that other attraction, or is bringing in the missing value. What is missing for us to see the full picture here? Um, for example, I talk about that with Uranus, okay, the creative endeavors, but when it's like a Pluto Venus hard aspect, it's downright to the nitty-gritties of the wealth distribution, the power distribution need to have more equity, and um, we need to have the politics supporting of healthy connections so that there can be one. We need to have um, the occultistic practices supporting of being safe embodied in our sensuality and sexuality, so that there can be relation. And when it's not, it can manifest itself as the married couple that have lovers, or and Venus is also creativity. Okay, so when you think about it also professionally, where for many professions you have to get mingled in with certain trajectories that are Epstein-like, then what is like is why is the cheating is not your problem? Okay, you understand, because this is particularly when, if I go to Melania Trump, okay, and the rumor that she was, whether that rumor is true or not, that she was trafficked to Donald Trump and she was an Epstein Gold trafficked to Donald Trump. We know that Melania Trump is an incredibly powerful and strong woman in a setting that is not designed for women to be powerful and strong. And that can be said of every spousey of Donald Trump, to be very, to be very open. He was married to businesswomen, okay? and um, and it's not a usual type of setting. Um, so But when you think about the Cartesian division of Madonna and whore, you understand that if the whore is basically trafficked, then so is the Madonna. And that can be the very reason why people try to break that glass ceiling and have unexpected affairs, unexpected attractions. Sometimes it's not exactly volitional, and that can range on the axis of those things, um, and that can grow into situations where people have obsessions and so on. Um, but that can absolutely be a telltale that this is a crisis of power distribution and values and connection and relation. Um, so those situations can absolutely arise also in a progress chart, but when they have the annual aspects, they can be remedial. They can be this juxtaposition is actually going well for a while to tend to these topics in a less of a crisis way. Now, there are always going to be challenges together with things. Okay, so you can have an amiable Pluto Venus, but then Mars squaring Uranus in the background, and it's kind of like, oh, then that happened. Okay. Um, More to say about the progressed composite. Progress composite is something you want to pay attention to if you are electing time to celebrate a union or to orchestrate. If it's a form of commitment or agreement, then this is also something that you can add to the election or to the electional process for these things. Um, if you are working on some sort of non-monogamous working or romantic relationships, so let's say you're Gen Zer and you're having a job at a corporation where you want to be taking some time to do your own project, then let's say the progress chart with your boss might be very useful, or the progress chart with the brand, okay, with the foundation of the company might be very useful for when you want to be working with that company versus when you want to be working on your own projects. Okay, just me trying to apply that beyond the conventional setting of romantic relationships. um, the topics that you deal with, of course, are very much denoted by the natal charts, but also they usually have a certain relation. Okay, so um, when it comes to the composite chart, it tells you what are you dealing with right now, what topics come into fruition right now. You just see the thing that is coming up the most, and you look at the composite chart and you say, okay, what could that thing be? um, let's say rights of women during war. That is like, oh, that's probably Venus doing something in the composite. Oh, Venus is with Jupiter, or Venus is with Pluto. Um, and that makes sense for that to happen. Oh, real estate and the secret societies. Oh, that must be Neptune doing something, or oh, it's kind of like are they fighting their, maybe it's a Mars thing, Mars Pluto, Mars. Oh, they want to change something around that. Okay, that Mars, at least one of them wants to change something around that. Oh, okay, that might be the Mars Uranus, and this is where you know that those are the topics that are coming to the forefront. Um, I don't know how to. Yeah, Jupiter aspects can be ideas, religion, children, optimism, opportunities, growth, um, expansion. Okay. Um, yes. Things to do with codependency can be Neptunian themes. I said what I said when it comes to diagnosing people for being codependent. They might have a Neptune going through transiting through the seventh house. So if it's not there natally, I think it is fair to say to them. And there are a lot of psychologists that are also astrologers. So it's kind of like, yeah, there's a Neptune going through your seventh house. It's going to be there. You learn how to discern yourself from another. Your relationships, you're gonna feel like you're a codependent person for the next 10 to 15 years, let's say, and it's going through a certain phase where you probably are going to be continuing this type of trajectory when it comes to your shared energies and investments uh, in the next decade. Or if that person having a natal, then it's kind of like, well, there is a natal signature of Neptune going through of the seventh house, where the Neptune aspects to that Neptune and aspects to that Neptune and the ruler of that Neptune can denote a time where that is more sensitive. But in general, this denotes of a lifelong trajectory where topics of the seventh house would need to be addressed in a more holistic sense. Okay, so that's usually beyond your relationship coach, so to speak. Um, yeah, that's all I have to say. So I was just waking up today thinking how composite charts and progress composites uh, uh, are another factor that can be then that can be very challenging when we don't know what to look at, or it can be actually very remediating when we go through the opposite of rough patches. So yes, thank you for watching.